God here, and welcome to the Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoiseth and Dave Dabbah.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. It is week number 5 of your National Football League season. Indoors today with me, I've got Brad Hoiseth from beautiful Southern California. I am Dave Dabbah. Brad and I can say, are both super excited about this upcoming week of National Football League football, which might actually just sort of, Brad, extend into 2 weeks to get a week of National League football in.
Yeah, I mean, it's, these updates on COVID are coming in, it seems like by the hour right now, and the NFL's got a real situation on their hands right now. I mean, the latest report is that, the Bills and Titans now has been moved to Tuesday. It's also now reported that the Patriots and Broncos game is being moved to Monday. And a result of that Tuesday game now, the Bills were scheduled to play next Thursday. So that game has been moved back to Saturday, as I understand it. So the NFL's got a problem on their hands right now. And it seems to be the Tennessee Titans may have gotten themselves in a little trouble. There's rumors out there that they were having practices at a high school field, with some of the guys. I mean, I don't know. I think they got some real problems there. They're gonna face some penalties if these things prove out. But they're a team right now that's putting the 2020 season in jeopardy, and I got a sense that they're going to pay a big price for it.
Yeah. I mean, I would have thought it would have been a team like the Cleveland Browns that would have caused all this trouble. But a Mike Vrabel-led Tennessee Titan team appears to be pretty loose. There was this rumor earlier in the day, I don't know if you saw, Brad, but that Gilmore, who tested positive for with the New England Patriots, there was this story, and I don't know if it was true or not, so I think I'm just sort of spreading rumors right now, but the story earlier in the day was that he actually had dinner with Cam Newton on Friday, which seems crazy, right? But is it really? I mean, I don't know. So this is just a crazy time for all of us. Hey, Brad, before we get into this week's picks, I did want to say one thing. We're at the quarter of the National Football League season is now officially behind us.
Right.
And I was thinking about this, and Brad and I did no prep at all for this show this week together. But I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, I wonder what is really the biggest surprise in the National Football League yet at this point of the season. What is the biggest surprise to you, Mr. Hoiseth, inside the National Football League?
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because, and I don't know that I have a number one surprise, but what I'll say is this, is now that we got 4 weeks of the season in, you can kind of start to see things forming in front of you. You get a better picture. After one game or 2 games, it's kind of hard to tell if a team's really that bad or really that good, or if they're that confused, or if the coaching's that bad. But we're starting to see some definite points now that we can talk about. The Dallas Cowboys defense is horrendous. I mean, they are bad on every level. I don't think there's any way.
Thanks for bringing up my Super Bowl pick. I appreciate that. Right.
And then here's one that's, I think, still kind of under the radar a little bit, is I think the Indianapolis Colts defense is really, really good. And so you're starting to see these things kind of forms. If you just play one game and you play somebody that's bad and your stats are enormous, you look great. And then the next week, but after 4 weeks now, you can start seeing things kind of, come together. I think it's pretty clear the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be a difficult team to beat, short of any, big injuries, things of that nature. And I don't know that it's because their defense is that great, but, their defense is good enough where, with that offense, you can just flip a switch and that team can score a touchdown in a heartbeat. And, Andy Reid seems to have, be pulling up all aces every time he gets an opportunity. And so, is there a number one thing that stands out? I think it's just really bad defense. I mean, there are some historically bad defenses out there right now. The Cowboys are just horrendous. The Texans are terrible. The Jets are. I mean, there's some really, really bad defenses out there. The Atlanta Falcons. I mean, there's so many teams you could throw into that mix that just can't get a stop at any point.
Yeah. I would, the defense is definitely, biggest surprise. And obviously I think it's sort of, COVID related. It's the fact that, there was no hitting in practice. It's different for offenses, to do walkthroughs. An offense can actually sort of figure things out in fact, they would prefer not to get hit, in practice. Whereas defenses, on the other hand, are predicated on actually hitting people. And so if you take that away from them in practice, then you're certainly going to have some issues. But I think the biggest surprise for me, and also at the same time, the most painful thing that could happen to me at the start of the National Football League this season, in the first 4 weeks, is how well the Green Bay Packers are playing. And Aaron Rodgers, suddenly, Brad, we hear all this stuff that suddenly came out last week about how Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur are suddenly having a love affair. I don't know, you heard this, but they're doing Zoom calls and they're doing all sorts of stuff during the off season, when we all thought Aaron Rodgers was actually really just upset about the Jordan Love pick. But as it turns out, Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur really got on the same page during the offseason, and you can see it with Matt LaFleur, making adjustments throughout the game. And then the other thing I was going to say is, as much as Mike Pettin failed as a head coach in this very National Football League, I feel like he's done a really nice job with a bunch of players on the defensive end of the ball that you've just never heard of before. And he's got the Green Bay Packer D playing, well enough to get Aaron Rodgers the ball enough for the Green Bay Packers to be undefeated heading into week number 5, which of course they've got to bye this week.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about at the beginning of the season when you did your first power rankings of the season, the issue came up, and I think I mentioned it and somebody else mentioned it. And you made fun of it. That, the drafting of Jordan Love. And I said, look, this might be motivation for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, how many times have we seen it before where this guy, you think just when you think he's done or that he's on a decline, he's not a young guy anymore, but he's still playing like he's a young guy. And they're certainly playing well now. I wouldn't say that they've played a particularly tough schedule. I think, it's a long season. It's a 16-game season. If they get a couple of injuries like everybody else has, we'll see where this goes for the Packers. But certainly it looks like, they've got to be the clear favorites to win that division. No question about it.
Yeah. All right, Brad, let's do it. Let's dive into our top 10 games in National Football League for week number 5, worth spending some money on.
Well, it was a tough schedule this week because, there were some games that they don't even have a line on. The lines went back and forth and never really got out of the gate with the 49ers. I think Vegas is still wondering if Jimmy Garoppolo is going to play. So we had a limited amount of games to choose from. Game number 5 for me is the Cardinals at the Jets. The Cardinals are a 7-point favorite. Remember back to week 1, they beat the 49ers. Everybody was like, yeah, Cardinals. And ever since then, we've kind of had to cool off a little bit on that. They were minus 3 turnovers against Detroit 2 weeks ago. They gave up 444 yards to Carolina last week. And so things aren't all perfect in Arizona. The game is at the Jets. The Jets, they just got rid, they lost their quarterback. Now Joe Flacco is going to start. They've given up 12 sacks. And now they start a slower guy in Joe Flacco. And so Arizona's got a lot of sacks on the year. They've got like 11 sacks or something like that. But, the Cardinals have played a soft schedule. Their opponents are only 6-10. The Jets are 10-6. Le'Veon Bell returns from an injury. Looks like they might get wide receiver Rashad Perriman back. I say if you're the Jets at your home and you're getting 7 points, I'm going to go with the Jets at home, and I'm going to take the 7 points.
Yeah, as much as this pains me, and you knew I was going to say something like that at the beginning because you have me at this point in a game. Thanks for picking this game, Brad, by the way. You have me at this point having to actually go against, one of my dark horses, the Arizona Cardinals, who had definitely played really well in the first 2 weeks of the season, who have, sort of fallen off to the point where Cliff Kingsbury should not be allowed in his main house. He should have to stay in the casita until they win another game at home. But, the fact that Joe Flacco is starting at quarterback and Sam Darnold isn't is what sort of put me over the top on this. And this is why I'm actually agreeing with you on this publicly that the, go ahead and take the 7 points and take the Jets in this particular game. And I think that's, if you're spending some money on this game, that's exactly where I would head with that one. Okay, so moving on to my fifth pick of the week. Brad, this one is just it's dear to my heart. It is, your defense of the year, the Indianapolis Colts, or your most improving defense of the year, the Indianapolis Colts, against the Cleveland Browns. And the Colts are actually favored in this by 1.5 points. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Browns. It's not so much that I believe in Baker Mayfield. It's that I'm actually starting to believe after 4 weeks in Kevin Stefanski's ability to figure out how to use Baker Mayfield correctly. Now, I know last week probably shouldn't count, but last time I checked, the Dallas Cowboys haven't been relegated from the National Football League just yet. And the fact that they scored 49 points against the Cowboys last week, has me believing that while they're going to play a vastly improved defense in the Indianapolis Colts this weekend, that the ball control offense that they're going to be running, where Kevin Stefanski continues to make Baker Mayfield hand the ball off, is what's going to win this particular game, despite the fact that Nick Chubb might or might not play in this particular game.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, this is kind of one of those toss-up games. Whenever you see a game that's got a line of 1.5, it's one of these games that could really go either way. I think of the Browns historically, and just when you think they've got something, they remind you that they don't. And so, I think, like I said at the beginning, I think the Colts are a better football team than people are giving them credit for. I think that defense is very solid. Baker Mayfield has not played a bunch of great defenses so far. I think he's going to have to put the ball in the air a little bit this week. The Cleveland defense has had a propensity to give up some points. If I'm Indianapolis, I'm a little afraid of the pass rush from Cleveland because, obviously Phillip Rivers is not the most mobile guy in the world, but I'm going to go with the Colts. I'm going to give you that 1.5. I'll take the Colts in that game against the Browns.
Yeah. And, I'm still sticking with the Browns in this game. I think you're wrong, Brad, for a wide variety of reasons. I do want to clarify, though, that Nick Chubb will not play this weekend, which would make a lot more people, I think, lean towards Brad on this one. You just wait and watch. Kevin Stefanski has this thing figured out at this point. All right, Brad, you're up with your next pick.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to say that I'm not quite sure Nick Chubb is the best running back in town there in Cleveland. I'm not sure that that's not addition by subtraction for the Browns because I think Kareem Hunt's a heck of a good football player. Moving on to my fourth game, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Houston Texans, another scintillating game that we can't wait to watch, where the over-under is 54. And this over-under started at 47. I'm not going to play the game. I don't have an affinity for either team. I just think it's going to go over. When you look at these two defenses, they are both horrendous. The numbers all over the place. No question why Bill O'Brien got fired. I mean, Houston had one of the worst starts in the league. Houston is dead last in the league on rush defense. Jacksonville is number 26 in rush defense. Houston is dead last in rushing offense. The Jags are number 22 in rushing offense. The numbers, they're just having said, both teams give up a high completion percentage. Jacksonville's dead last. Get this one. The Jaguars are letting opposing quarterbacks complete 77% of their passes. That's almost impossible. So, and Houston is 26. They're giving up 71%. Nobody can stop anybody in this game. I say it goes over. It's surprising to me it's not closer to 65 rather than 54. I'll take the over 54 between the Jags and Texans.
Yeah, I was torn on this one for the last 12 hours. Taking a look at it. Originally, Brad, I had planned on taking the under on this, but I'm switching it up. I am going to agree with you on the over. The argument that you made is compelling, and is probably correct. Look, J.J. Watt is it on the Houston Texans with regards to their defense, and we know that Jacksonville doesn't have anything. And if you look at Deshaun Watson at this point, you still got a lot of nice talent at wide receiver. Yeah, I don't believe in David Johnson at all. You know that. But in terms of the Houston Texans' ability to score 30 points in a game, and Gardner Minshew's ability to score 27 in a game, especially with a change at head coach in Houston, it's a flux week. I agree with you. I'll go with the actual over on this.
One more point on that, too. Jacksonville's got the injury bug. Miles Jack got injured last week. Their corner, DJ Hayden, just went to injured reserve. So one of the worst defenses in the league just got worse. So, yeah. I think there's probably some renewed optimism in Houston with the coaching change. It appears like there was a revolt in the locker room. And so I say the Texans at home come out, score a lot of points. The Jags match them for a while. But this thing's destined to have a lot of points scored.
Yeah. All right. With my fourth pick of the week, and every week I try to give Brad something special. And it usually revolves around Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles, which I'm doing again this week, Brad. I've got the Eagles, heading to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers in this particular game. The Steelers, if you pick the Steelers, you got to give up 7. Let's just get this out of the way real quick before I get on my Eagles rant. But the Steelers have had that unplanned week off. They got healthy. Mike Tomlin will have this team, sort of heading in the right direction. They're better in all 3 phases of the game at this point. I think we've all been, pretty impressed with Ben Roethlisberger as well. Philadelphia will not get any pressure at all on Roethlisberger in this game. This to me is, could have been a 10-point spread, and I'd still take the Steelers in this one just because I believe in Ben Roethlisberger, especially a rested Ben Roethlisberger, a Mike Tomlin that's now had, 2 weeks to prepare for Carson Wentz and whatever it is that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to try to do. I do want to say one thing about the Eagles, who had a heroic Carson Wentz performance last week in their victory in Santa Clara over the San Francisco 49ers. The other thing is on Mighty Rip. There's a blog this week that we published about the National Football League actually starting to consider this word called relegation. And in European soccer, there's this thing called relegation, and that's when your team plays so poorly that they get essentially kicked out of the league and get pushed down into a second league. And they have to do well in that second league before they can come back up to the Premier League. This is just a quick example for for all of you out there and how it works. The entire National Football League Conference, the NFC East, is due to be relegated if the season were to end today. The New York Giants are 0-4 after a quarter of the National Football League season, and they're just 1.5 games out of first place at 0-4. The Philadelphia Eagles are 1-2-1. The second place team is the Washington football team, right? Who just benched their quarterback. They didn't even just bench Dwayne Haskins. They said, "You are so bad, Dwayne, that you're not even the backup this week. You're going to be the third string quarterback on the depth chart." And then there was all this silliness about who should trade for Dwayne Haskins. I was like, can a CFL team trade for Dwayne Haskins? So I think when I look at this Philadelphia Eagles team, it's weak. It's in a terribly weak division. This should be the Cowboys' division to lose, which they're really working on at this point.
The funny thing is about this division, too, is that I got three of my favorite coaches. I mean, I love Johnson in Philadelphia. I like Riverboat Ron. I'm not the biggest Mike McCarthy fan, but, that's because I knew a lot of Packers fans that couldn't stand the guy. They thought he was terrible. And so far, the Packers fans have been proven right on that, because I'm not quite sure Mike McCarthy is going to last very long there in Dallas. They're already clamoring to get Jason Garrett back there in Dallas. So, look, Carson Wentz, the metric I use, he's got the worst quarterback rating in the league. And so I'm not sure that's going to get any better this week. Pittsburgh's got one of the best defenses in the league. They've had an extra week now to think about it. And so, yes, Philadelphia's got to be excited. Hey, they're in first place, right? I mean, if they win, they could have a game and a half lead after this thing's all done, right? But it doesn't really work that way. Pittsburgh's a far superior football team. Philadelphia's a mess. And I believe I'm with you. I take the Steelers. I give the 7 all day long playing at home.
Yeah. Look, I love Ron Rivera as well. He's dealing with a lot of personal issues on top of it. But I love Ron Rivera, though. He came out this week and he said, "Look, we're still in this. I'm going to make a change because I've got to make a change because we're still in this." Like, you can't even believe he's in it at 1-3 at this point. And all the people out there in the media that were complaining that Haskins got benched in Washington need to go take a look at the statistics that have his QBR ranking at 30. His quarterback completion ranking is in Sam Darnold territory. Sam Darnold, who has that disease of a head coach and Adam Gase leading him, trying to teach him how to play in the National Football League. It's just absolutely ridiculous for Dwayne Haskins. He's proven that he doesn't belong as a starting quarterback in the National Football League at this point.
Well, that brings me to my number 3 game of the week. It is the Rams, your Los Angeles Rams, at the football team from Washington. And the Rams are 7.5-point favorites on the road in Washington. I'm a big Riverboat Ron guy. I like the move. I'm not entirely sure Kyle Allen is the future in Washington. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's not. But waiting right behind him is a pretty talented guy in front of Haskins. And so, Ron is one of the better coaches in the league. And that was a good decision by him. He realized that Haskins is probably not going to guy. He moved him all the way to number 3 on the depth chart, behind Alex Smith. And, he's not afraid to do what he thinks is right for his football team. Here's what this game comes down to. And I know that you are a big Jared Goff guy. And you know how I feel about Jared Goff. Can't stand Jared Goff. Well, Jared Goff's going to get introduced to a young rookie this week by the name of Chase Young. And in my opinion, that's not good for Jared Goff. He's been sacked 12 times already this season. I expect that number to go up. The football team is getting 7.5 at home. I'm taking Washington at home against Jared Goff all day long, every day, twice on Sunday, my friend.
We got a twice on Sunday out of Hoiseth on that one.
He got a twice on Sunday reference.
So look, the Rams and Sean McVay are sort of like the Kansas City Chiefs in that they can have a C-plus performance in a game and still find a way to win. They don't always have to have an A-plus performance in a game. They don't always have to, be successful in all three phases of the game for them to find a way to win. I have to say this. I was so unbelievably disappointed with how poor the Rams played last week. And I think they were just like disinterested. It's the New York Giants.
No, Dave, their quarterback is bad. That's the problem. He's not a good football player. That's the problem. If they had a legitimate quarterback playing for them, they would be a Super Bowl contender. This guy is clueless. He never looks to the second read. He stares down his wide receivers. And then when somebody comes in to rush him, he just falls down. He's unquestionably, in my mind, one of the worst 5 quarterbacks in the league.
Okay. So we know where Brad stands on Goff. I got a different opinion about Goff. A little bit better than a game manager, certainly a bigger arm than a Baker Mayfield. And I feel like him and Sean McVay are on the same page. This is actually pretty tough to pick because of the quarterback change in Washington this week. I mean, it was a no-brainer before the quarterback change was made, in my opinion. But you just don't know what you're going to get with Allen at this point. But I just have to believe that the Rams are upset. Last week was a wake-up call at home against the Giants. They're not going to fly across the country and fold in any real way this week. They're probably going to win by at least 10. So I'm going with the quarterback that Brad Hoiseth hates to love the most in Jared Goff and the Rams in this particular game. Okay. All right, Brad. So many good lines there, my friend. So I'm moving on. I've got a Thursday night football game, which, of course, we will admit that this podcast will probably not be out until Friday, but it was recorded before the start of this Bucks versus Bears game. And we'll prove it to you because we're both picking different teams in this game. The Bucks are favored by what are they favored by, Brad? 3.5 in this one, I think.
You picked the game. It's the Bucks are favored by 3.5.
Yeah, Bucks by 3.5. So these lines keep changing like every 2 hours. So when we picked the game, the Bucks were favored by 3.5. I have a really, when I sort of take a step back and I look at this, I say, well, the Tampa Bay defense is sort of hit or miss. It sort of depends on who they're playing that week, if they're going to be successful or sort of just be a mediocre defense. They have enough talent to be a top 5 defense in the National Football League, but they're just not consistent yet. We know that Tom Brady is sort of starting to try to figure things out. He's still good for a pick 6 almost every week. He's really consistent at that. And he's starting to hone in on how to use Mike Evans, and he's starting to hone in on how to use some of the other weapons that he has on his team. Plus, rumor of the day was that he was going to buy a new house worth $7.5 million in Tampa Bay. And, Brad, a $7.5 million house in Tampa is worth at least $20 million where you live. And right down the street from where I'm at, it's like $35 million for something like that. It's crazy, how big that thing is that he's looking at buying. But I just have, when I look at the 2 quarterbacks that are starting in this game, I say, well, it's Tom Brady. He's at home. He's going up against. How can you even believe in Nick Foles at all? Did you not watch anything with Nick Foles last year and the Jacksonville Jaguars? Did you somehow burn that tape and totally forget about it? Did you not pay attention to how well Nick Foles didn't play last week? Look, I know he showed up for half a game and brought back memories of Jim McMahon for you, Hoiseth. But how in the world are you going to go with the Chicago Bears and the points in this one? I'm going with the Bucks. You know where Brad's going. You're up.
Hey, look, the Bears they're one of those teams that, I don't know, they lost last week. They played a pretty good football team last week. They've actually played a fairly difficult schedule so far. And I'd have to say that overall they're ahead of where I think a lot of people thought they would be. I just thought 3.5 was a lot. I see this being a field goal game. Tampa plays good defense. I think Nick Foles will probably struggle again tonight. But the Bears have got a pretty good defense. I see it being a low-scoring affair. And, when you see a low over-under like that, see a team getting 3.5, I just like that. And, I'm not a believer yet that everything is perfect in Tampa. I think that, like you said, Tom Brady started throwing pick sixes. I mean, he started looking like Jameis Winston out there. And, I don't know maybe it's the uniform, maybe it's the environment. I don't know. But, he's thrown some unusually bad passes this year. I still think Tampa gets the win. I just thought 3.5 points was a lot. So It's not that I have a love affair with the Bears or anything like that. I just thought 3.5 points in that game was too much.
Look, the Bears had such an unusual good start to this season. I mean, they're 3-1 right now. Literally, if they were in the NFC East, all they'd have to do, Brad, to win the division is win 4 more games. I mean, it's crazy, sort of how well, Matt Nagy has this Bears team playing when you actually sit back and you look at the roster and you sort of see, the gaps and the weaknesses. And that's why I always say in the National Football League, coaching really, really does matter here. And the example of that is, Pete Carroll and if you will, Dan Quinn of the Atlanta Falcons. And, Pete Carroll's 4-0, Brad. And Dan Quinn, as you know, is still the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons somehow because Arthur Blank moves like a sloth when it comes to what the hell is he going to do with Dan Quinn. But when you look at their defenses and you look at their statistics of both of these defenses, they're both equally bad. They're both in the top 3 worst defenses in the National Football League, the Seahawks as well as the Falcons. And the only difference really, Matt Ryan puts up big numbers, but we know he's not Russell Wilson. But still, when you look at this is a question of coaching. And, Pete Carroll's just such a good coach that is able to overcome a lot of things. And I think Matt Nagy's a pretty good coach. I'm not saying he's like a top 5 coach in the National Football League, but I actually think he's a pretty good coach. He's the kind of coach that, how has he really even failed as a coach in the National Football League? Like, what was last year his worst season as a head coach in the National Football League? And what were they, 8-8? He gets it. He's underrated, I think. So I would expect the Bears to play well enough to, sort of keep things close. But I can't wait for the realization in this Thursday night game, Brad, because it's going to happen. I can't wait. I can't wait for the 3rd interception that Nick Foles throws. And then the question of, will Trubisky be in the game in the second half? You just watch halftime of the show because that's going to be coming up.
Well, let me ask you this. If Foles and the Bears win, will you issue an apology for me? How's that?
I will formally issue an apology to Brad Hoiseth and Nick Foles as well.
That's all I need.
Well, Nick Foles actually has to lead them to the win, so that's the one stipulation or requirement I have in this.
Well, you gave me a nice segue. You talk about Pete Carroll. That's my next game. The Vikes are at the Seahawks. It's been wildly noted here on the Gods of Odds that I am now 4-0 on the Vikings games this year. So the Vikings wish they were 4-0, but I am 4-0 while picking the Vikings games. And that game is at Seattle. And I am picking the over-under, which is at 57.5, which I thought was pretty high. The Seahawks have got a high-powered offense. The Vikings have had their moments, let's just say. Neither team plays a lot of defense. And so many people think, well, he must be taking the over. I'm actually going to go the under on this one because to to me, this game comes down to a stylistic thing. And what the Vikings do well is they do well running the ball. Well, the Seattle's actually very good against the run as well. So the Vikings are number 3 in the league in yards per carry. Seattle's number 3 in giving up yards per carry. They only give up 3.4 yards a carry. And then where Seattle is good, the Vikings are not very good. Seattle's number 3 in passing offense. The Vikings are number 29. So, the Vikings have played a far superior schedule than Seattle. Minnesota opponents are 10-5. Seattle opponents are just 4-12. I think that does make a difference at some point. I mean, there's a lot of people out there right now. They've got Seattle way up high in their power rankings. Let's not forget, they've played a really lousy schedule so far. And so I think things will slow down. I think the Vikings will try to control the tempo of the game with some running game. They'd prefer the thing to be in the 20s. I still think Seattle wins the game, but I think 57.5 is predicated on what Seattle's done so far against some really bad football teams. I think the Vikings will be able to control the clock a little bit better. I think ultimately it will get away from them, but at 57.5, I took the under in this game.
Yeah. So this is a Sunday night football game on NBC, and I sort of looked at this, and I agree with you, Brad, on the under on this game. And it's sort of less to do, especially after my last rant about how bad the Seattle Seahawks defense is, because it is. But it's sort of more about, time of possession. I know that, Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks are a methodical team. They can be a quick strike offense, but they're going to control the clock for a lot of this game. And when you're in a game where there's that kind of offense sort of controlling the clock the way they do, then, you're probably safer. It's almost always a safer bet to go with an under, especially in a game like this. This is, a nationally televised game. I think historically, we've seen maybe 2 good games that Kirk Cousins has had on nationally televised games throughout his entire career at this point. So you have that sort of going against you. You have the fact that it's in Seattle going against you. I know there's no fans in the stands, but still, the Vikes are going to be on the road. I agree that I think the Seahawks will win this game. There is one sort of X factor. And one thing I just want people to watch out for in this game, if you haven't had a chance to watch Justin Jefferson play yet. And that is assuming that Gary Kubiak, the offensive coordinator, doesn't forget that Justin Jefferson's on his team, which is possible because he sometimes sort of coaches like he has Alzheimer's. I hate to make fun of it, but I mean, he forgets what works from series to series. And you've got this great young wide receiver who has really, I got to tell you, like some of the best hands I've ever seen for a young wide receiver in the National Football League. Great crop of great young wide receivers that came out this year. And the Vikings just happen to have one of them. Check out what Justin Jefferson can do on Sunday Night Football.
Let's also not forget too, the Vikings have been really, really poor in prime time in recent years. They've had some embarrassing moments. I think Zimmer is something like 0-4 against Seattle lifetime. They always go in and they look okay.
Yeah.
I mean, against the Seahawks. I mean, everybody knows how to contain Russell Wilson. They know the concept. You got to keep him in the pocket, make him a pocket passer. Just that nobody is able to execute it. And so what you end up having is, Russell Wilson's the one guy that I said years ago, he's the first guy that I've seen is better because he's got a bad offensive line. It makes him go on the run. It makes him go out of the pocket and throw deep. The Vikings will know how to defend him. Whether or not they'll be able to execute is another thing. I don't know why people keep making the same mistake. For some reason, they allow DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett to get behind him. How many times have we seen it where Russell Wilson, it's a broken down play, and all of a sudden he throws downfield and Lockett's 7 yards behind a defender? The Vikings have to keep the play in front of them. They have to give them a little extra cushion at the line of scrimmage, keep Russell Wilson in the pocket, make him methodically go down the field. And that's what I see happening in this game because Even if the Vikings do everything right, I still don't think they have enough pieces on defense right now with all the injuries and all the new faces to really stop Seattle for a consistent amount of time. I do see it going the under, but I just don't see this going well for the Vikings at all.
Yeah. and this is a an improving defense in the secondary. They've got some nice young talent there. But it's yet another good team that they're going up against, at the start of the season. And sometimes young players need success. They need to play the Bengals and they need to play the Jets and the Giants, and build some confidence before they go up against a Russell Wilson. And so that's, another thing that the Vikes, I would say, have going against them in this particular game. But this is, for all intents and purposes, Brad, a must-win for the Vikes at this point if they want to do anything, with regards to, even having a shot at making the playoffs. 1-4 is bad. 2-3 is just way better. And that's got to be something that's on the mind of this football team. So I expect them to play hard. I expect Zimmer to do a good job, but not changing my over/under pick on this one at all. Speaking of just crazy numbers, Brad, just numbers that I said last week I rarely like to touch. And that is the Bengals versus the Ravens. In this particular game, the Ravens are giving up 13.5 points to the Bengals. I actually believe that, the word is out on the streets. You walk the streets of Baltimore, you walk the streets of Dallas, you walk the streets of Cincinnati. For God's sakes, Brad, if you even walk the streets of Cleveland, what you would find out is that the rumor of how to stop Lamar Jackson, at least how to slow him down enough, is out. Yes.
First of all, I'd like to say I'm not a guy that walks the streets, Dabbah, so I'll let you walk the streets, all right?
Yeah. So
what do you do walking the streets? Who walks the streets?
With the mask on now, too. And 6 feet apart. Like 6 feet apart's enough. Anyways, so I just think that in this particular game, the Bengals and Joe Burrow are not getting enough respect. Maybe Zach Taylor is getting the kind of respect he should get, which is none. But I actually, believe in Joe Burrow. I believe that he's successfully avoided the trauma centers to this point. I feel like he's getting better every week. You and I both know that this is the worst offensive line in all of football with the Bengals. But I think the Bengal defense will learn enough from what other teams have started to do. Even Washington, for a little while last week, sort of kept the Ravens in check for a while. So I believe that the Ravens are definitely going to win this game. I just don't think they're going to cover that 13.5, and that's why I'm going with Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you on that one. You say that the Bengals don't get any respect. You take them every damn week. What do you mean they don't get any respect? Here's the reality. One team is really good, and the other team is really bad. And so when you put it into that perspective,
is some of the finest analysis ever.
Hey, look,
there's a good team over here.
There's a really good team over here, and there's a really bad team there. And when you have that formula all working together, 13.5 points can go away in about 13.5 seconds. And so the Cincinnati Bengals are not a good football team. I'm going to take the Ravens. I'll give them the 13.5 because I just don't care. I hate the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't like their – when are they going to change those helmets? Really? I mean, see, those are the ugliest helmets in the league.
Oh, man. I could get in all sorts of trouble if I started talking about what those helmets really represent. So I'm not. Brad, what's your I think we're up to your – are we up to your number one pick of the week?
We are indeed up to my number one pick, and it is the Chargers at the Saints. And that game is New Orleans is a 7.5-point favorite. And it's a suddenly reeling Chargers team. They've had 3 tough losses in a row now. Remember that big start they got? Well, it wasn't a big start. They beat your Bengals. But then they've lost 3 in a row to the Chiefs, the Panthers, and the Buccaneers. And I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, that losing Melvin Ingram for them was huge. And we've seen that the last few weeks. The Chargers' pass defense is now ranked number 25 in the league. They have just 6 sacks the entire season. 3 of them came against the Bengals. So I expect a big day for Drew Brees. The Chargers have also now lost Austin Eckler to a hamstring. Mike Williams seems to always have some sort of injury. Now he's got a hamstring. It might keep him sidelined. Both these teams have played a tough schedule so far. The Saints' opponents are 9-7. The Chargers are 10-5-1. So the Chargers have played a tough schedule. And they've had a pretty good rush defense so far. I just think Drew Brees, without Melvin Ingram, who was the one guy that could create some obstacles for him, I just think the Saints, every year we find ourselves during a point of the season where Sean Payton's teams go on a run. I just kind of feel like the Chargers are limping coming into this thing. They've lost 3 straight. They're playing another good football team on the road. 7.5 points. I'm going to take the Saints. I'm going to give the 7.5.
Yeah. So this is where I agree. Sean Payton starting to roll a little bit. They'll get on a little bit of roll. It's the teams they don't play a lot though that sort of concern me when I think about Sean Payton and his coaching staff. And so I'm a little concerned that Justin Herbert, who by the way was finally made the starter of the Chargers going forward today. The Chargers made the announcement just a couple hours ago. And it's an announcement that should have been made a long time ago. And so, the injuries to Eckler is a big one. And there's some injuries on the defensive side of the ball. And, clearly the Saints are going to win this game. And I would agree with you. They're gonna find a way to win by 7.5 or more in this particular game. I just think things are going to be a little bit more interesting than we think. Sort of heading into midway through the third quarter, but and that's just because the Saints haven't spent a lot of time over the years playing the Chargers, regardless of whatever city they're from. All right. With our last pick of the week, of our top 10 National Football League games worth spending some money on. It's a game that's just so easy to pick, but at the same time, I want the Giants to actually win this game. I'm going with the Giants. It's the Giants at the Cowboys. The Cowboys, are giving up 9 points in this game. Realistically, I'm going to go ahead and say that the Cowboys are, a far superior team, and they will find a way to win this game. And I'm going to throw my money down on the Cowboys and give up the 9 points against just an absolutely horrific team. It's a coin toss between who's worse, the Giants or the Jets at this stage of the game. And I think more times than not, the Giants might actually end up losing that coin toss. That's how bad this New York Football Giants team has become. At the same time, Brad, seriously, wouldn't it be great, just for a second, when we look at this NFC East schedule this week, wouldn't it be great if the Giants won? The Eagles, we both agree, are going to lose. and I think, minus the points and everything, we might both agree that Washington's going to lose as well. So wouldn't it just be great to enter, a National Football League week number 6 with a team leading the NFC East with just one victory?
Yeah, some of my least favorite teams growing up are in that division. There's no doubt about it. Cowboys are one of those teams that you love them or you hate them. I've never been a big fan of the Eagles, dating back to Ron Jaworski. Never had. It seems like they've all beaten the Vikings in some sort of big game at some point.
I can't believe you don't like Jaws.
No, I know. Look, I'm going to give
Harold Carmichael.
I'm going to give your Cowboys one more try. That's what I'm going to do. Mike McCarthy's getting one more try from me. I'm going to tell you right now, if he doesn't get a win here, he might be one of the guys that's on a hot seat. So I just think that the Cowboys are, not a very good football team, but the Giants are a great tonic for if you're a bad football team. Yeah. And so I'm going to go with you. I'm going to take I'll give the 9 points, but this is it for me on the Cowboys. They either have to show up and play some football or I think, you could say that the season will be over, but it's not. In that division, you might be able to win 6-7 games and win that division.
Yeah. I think 7-9 gets you, or 7-8-1 gets you the division this year. And I think it's there needs to be some laws and rules put into the National Football League related to relegation at this point. There needs to be a punishment for bad football, because I really just want to see as much quality football as possible. One quick correction: tonight's Thursday night football game is actually in Chicago, so that was a huge, just a huge mistake on my part.
Would you like to change and take Nick Foles?
I will not take Nick Foles. I still believe in Tom Brady. It doesn't matter to me where this game is played. It could be played somewhere in the middle of Ohio, and I would still be picking the.
You like those Ohio teams, by the way. The Bengals, the Browns.
Oh yeah, it's just terrible. So, Brad, any last thoughts about Week 5 of your National Football League season on the Gods of Odds show?
No, I just, with all the stuff going on with the Patriots and the Tennessee Titans, I know that the league has got some things built in to take an entire week off, should things get so bad in so many places. And I just kind of feel like, we're at the beginning of the end of this thing for some reason or another. And I hope that these teams get a little more serious about it. And because, it's been fun to have football for 4 or 5 weeks. And, I'd hate to see it all go away because, of a couple guys and a couple teams that just couldn't control themselves. But nonetheless, that's where we're at right now. We're going to have a couple of Monday night games, maybe a Tuesday night game, maybe a Saturday game the next week. And, if you're playing fantasy football, it's got your lineups all screwed up. You're going to have to make some decisions. If, you could end up playing, a couple Titans and a couple Bills on Tuesday night, and then they don't play. The game ends up getting canceled, and then you're screwed. So it's really throwing a lot of people's schedules up in the air, and I just hope that we get through this thing this week and that some of these teams have learned from that, then we can move on and get back to things as normal.
Yeah, I think early on in Major League Baseball's return, there were a couple hiccups sort of along the way. If we remember the famous Miami Marlins has apparently decided to go clubbing, because that's what you do when you're the Miami Marlins. And you can't do that in today's environment. And so things settled down in Major League Baseball after a couple of weeks. There's still some, pockets and some issues here and there. And so the hope is that will happen in the National Football League as well. I mean, I think the NFL made some good moves last week where they're basically testing daily now, which is really the only way that you can, sort of control this thing, and from preventing it to spread. So, short of, I saw this earlier in the week. Somebody said, well, they need 32 bubbles. Like, what do you do with 32? How do you bring two bubbles together? Do they play the games virtually, Brad, with 32 bubbles? So, I mean, look, it would be great if they could pull off some sort of bubble environment. And in a sense, these teams do need to create their own bubbles. But it really sort of comes down to the players relegating themselves and and keeping themselves in control in order for this whole thing to actually work. If not, we're going to be back to watching some of Brad Hoiseth's favorite COVID programming. Which,
the Nathan hot dog eating contest or something like that. Like the cornhole tournament that I watched during the summer, all that kind of stuff. Well, Dave, we got some football to watch. I got a Nick Foles game to watch. So let's get out of here, huh?
All right. On that note, thank you all for tuning in to episode, week 5 of your National Football League Gods of Odds show. That is Brad Hoiseth in Southern California. I am Dave Dabbah in Northern California, wishing you all a tremendous National Football League viewing weekend.
God here, and thanks for tuning in to the Gods of Odds. For more semi-witty sports commentary, please make sure you check out mighty.rip. Okay, go ahead and kill the music now.